Hello students, today we are going to start our second lecture of risk management. I am Professor Samyukta, Assistant Professor at ISM, will guide you through different learning objectives today. First, learning objectives. First one is types of risk premiums. In our last lecture that we discussed, we already covered what is the meaning of risk premiums. Now in this lecture today, we are going to cover the various types of risk premiums. Next one is risk management process. Here we are going to see the different steps that are involved in the risk management process, step by step. What should be the first step, second step, third, and like that. In the next objective, we are going to see the different ways of managing risk. Last but not the least of today's lecture is different types of risk. Now let's start with the first topic that we are going to cover today, that is types of risk premiums. The first type that comes is equity risk premium. What is equity risk premium? Let's have a look. Now before that, I will just brush up the ideas that was there behind the risk premium. Risk premium is actually defined as the extra amount of return that is paid for bearing an extra amount of risk. That is termed as risk premium. That is, in other words, you can say the return in excess of the risk-free return, rate of return an investment is expected to yield, or also an assessed risk premium. You can say it is a form of compensation for investors who is actually tolerating the extra risk which is compared to that of a risk-free asset in a given investment. So the extra amount of return that an investor gets for bearing an extra amount of risk, that is risk premium, that we have already seen. Now the first type that comes here is equity risk premium. What do you mean by this? Equity risk premium can be defined as the difference between the return on equity stocks as a class and the risk-free rate, represented commonly by the return on a treasury bill. Now the rate of return that we get from a treasury bill, the treasury bill is the safest investment device that we can say. So we have seen the relationship between the risk and the return in our last lecture, that as our risk increases, return also increases. Now since treasury bills, they are the safest ones, so the risk obviously are the minimum one, and the return that is given by treasury bill is the minimum. Whereas in case of equity, we can say the risk is very high there, and so the return is also very high over there. If we take the difference between the return that we get from the equity and the return that we get from the safest instrument, that is treasury bill, this amount of difference will give you the equity risk premium. The second type of risk premium is bond horizon premium. Let's see what is it. Difference between the return on long-term government bonds and the return on treasury bills. That is, treasury bills are actually short-term debt instruments, whereas government bonds are long-term debt instruments. Now, obviously, if you are going to hold some investment over a longer period of time, you are going to get some extra amount of return from it. That extra amount of return is actually a bond horizon premium. Horizon means the difference, time duration, you can say. Difference between a short term one and a longer term one, that is the bond horizon. So that difference, the extra amount of return that we are getting for holding a bond for a longer period of time will give you a extra amount of return. Whereas from the treasury bill, it is much lesser than the government bonds. So the difference if you are going to take, then we will get the bond horizon premium. Third one, the last type and a very important one is bond default premium. What is it? It's the difference between the return on long-term government bonds and the return on long-term corporate bonds. We all know that corporate bonds are having a much more higher amount of risk than a government bond. So the corporate bonds are actually giving a more high amount of return also as compared to the government bonds. Government bonds are giving a less amount of return. So that difference, if you're going to take the difference on the return on long-term government bonds, corporate bonds, and the government bonds, then that amount of difference is known as the bond default premium. Because the government bonds, the chances of default is very less. The government will always pay back the interest and the maturity value to its bondholders, whereas there are chances that the corporate bonds may default. Now, let's move on to the next topic of today, that is risk management process. This is very important as we have seen that risk management is very, very crucial in any organization, and it involves a systematic step-by-step process. Otherwise, it's never possible for any organization to handle its risk. First step that comes in this whole process is risk identification. We will see one by one what are the different steps and all. Risk identification. What is the role of this step? Here, the company identifies and defines potential risk that may negatively influence a specific company process or project. So first step of the process is simply identification. If we don't know what are the potential risks, it's not possible for us to take any steps for to mitigate that risk. So first step is we should identify it. Next step is risk analysis. Now, here once specific types of risk are identified, the company then determines what are the odds of it occurring, like what are the chances of it being occurring, right? Probability or likelihood of the risk to occur. It should be analyzed. And if it occurs, then what will be its consequences? Now, the goal of the analysis is to further understand each specific instance of risk and how it could influence the company's projects and objectives. That should be thoroughly found out by the risk management team. The third step is risk assessment and evaluation. After the analysis part is over, risk is then evaluated. Evaluated means it's evaluated in the sense that what is the amount of quantification of risk is done actually, right? Evaluation assessed, that is quantification, like what is the likelihood of chance of occurrence of the risk and then what is its consequence. If we multiply them, we will get the quantification of risk. If it occurs, then what will be the overall consequences? That is evaluated. The company can then make decisions on whether the risk is acceptable and whether the company is willing to take it on based on its risk appetite. Appetite is how much the company is able to take up the risk as per the capability of the company. Then comes risk mitigation. What is risk mitigation? During this stage, companies assess their highest ranked risk and develop a plan to alleviate them using specific risk controls. Now, these plans include risk mitigation process, risk prevention tactics, and contingency plans in the event the risk comes to fruition. The last one is risk monitoring, which is very important. Risk monitoring, it is actually a part of the mitigation plan, we can say, which includes following up on both the risk and the overall plan to continuously monitor and track new and existing risks. The overall risk management process should also be reviewed and updated accordingly. Our next topic is ways of managing risk. We'll see the different ways how risk can be managed. The first one is risk avoidance. Now, while the complete elimination of all risk is rarely possible, risk avoidance or prevention, you can say, which is not completely possible under any circumstances. But a risk avoidance strategy is designed to deflect as many threats as possible in order to avoid the costly and disruptive consequences of a damaging event. That can be done in risk avoidance state. So this is the first way of managing risk. Next is risk reduction. Risk reduction, companies are sometimes able to reduce the amount of effect that certain risk can have on company processes. This is achieved by adjusting certain aspects of an overall project plan or company process, or by reducing its scopes. So in this step, we can say that the company's effort is just to reduce the amount of risk or reduce the effect of risk on the company. Here we'll see the different loss reduction techniques are there that the company can use. First one we can say is separation. In this separation technique, actually this involves isolating the subjects exposed to the same risk, you can say, right? Examples of separation, we can say keeping inventories in different places, or the just putting the keep away from instructions that we find here and there. So that are found on glass cylinders, flammable materials, and dangerous medicines. These are sometimes used. Another example we can say like carriers of goods separating cargo which may ignite or contaminate if placed within a certain proximity of something else. This can be done. Next technique we can use is duplication. What is duplication? This involves keeping backup copies so that any loss will neither interrupt business nor be irretrievable, you can say. The last one is diversification. It is very important. This diversification, what we do is this involves spreading risk across areas which may not be affected equally or at the same time. So diversification is possible in business like making products which are in demand in different types of products for different markets. And in investments also, not investing all your funds in one company, right? Not putting all your eggs in one basket. This is simply diversification. Keeping different eggs in different baskets. The third technique is risk sharing or transfer. Now, risk sharing or transfer means this can be done by transferring your risk to another person. So the company can transfer its risk to some other organization, not keeping that risk with itself. The first, most important and very famous technique of risk transfer is, we can say, insurance. Right? You must have heard about this word insurance. Now, what is it? I'll just give a small description about what is insurance. Later on, we'll in our next lectures we'll discuss in details about the different workings of insurance and types of insurance. Here, just to clarify the idea about insurance, it is actually, you can say, an insurance company, which is actually referred to as the insurer, who promises to pay to the owner, that is insured, or the beneficiary of the asset, a certain sum of money, sum assured, which is technically termed as sum assured, if a loss occurs, so that they may try to ensure continuance of the financial benefits, right? The insured pays a certain amount or consideration amount to the insurance company for bearing the risk, which is termed as premium. It is, we can say, insurance is a pooling arrangement or a cooperative arrangement also to spread the loss caused by a particular risk over a large number of people who are exposed to it in exchange for a small sum of money. So a company, after paying a premium to the insurance company, it can transfer its risk to an insurance company. So if there is any kind of risk, suppose there is a fire and there is a loss of about 10 lakh and sum assured is 15 lakh. Sum assured is the maximum amount of compensation that is done by an insurance company to a policy holder. That is the organization. So maximum amount is 15 lakh and the loss that has occurred, you can say, is 10 lakh. So in this circumstances, the insurance company will compensate the organization by giving back the 10 lakh amount. But for that, the company should make sure that each year it pays a fire insurance. Suppose the loss due to fire it has taken. So that fire insurance premium should be paid, which is decided by the insurance company. This is insurance. Now, other than insurance, there are also some other kinds of risk transfer methods, we can say. First, one is indemnity agreements. Now, what is it? Where you can say that one party agrees to compensate another party for losses they may incur. So this is indemnity agreement. There is a kind of agreement between two parties where this is just one party agrees to compensate another party for losses that they may incur. Next is hedging. In hedging, what happens is where a financial transaction is made to offset the loss in another. This is done when the risk in the two transactions are considered reciprocal or moving in opposite direction. It is similar to diversification, you can see. Right? They are negatively correlated and that is used to hedge the situation. So in more details we will be discussing in our later chapters. There is a time constraint in here. Now, our last way of managing risk is risk retention. Risk retention simply it means that keeping the risk with yourself. Sometimes organizations, companies, they decide that a risk is worth it from a business standpoint and they decide to retain the risk and deal with any potential fallout. This is risk retention. Companies, they often retain a certain level of risk a project's anticipated profit is greater than the cost of its potential risk. So in that case, what it decides is to keep the amount, keep the risk with itself, so that let's see what will happen. If the risk will come, we are able to fight it back. So this is risk retention. Now we are going to discuss here that the different types of risk. The first is inflation risk. What is inflation risk? We know the inflation rate actually is a general upward movement of prices. Inflation reduces the purchasing power of the people. So this is a risk for investors who is receiving a fixed rate of interest. If the inflation will go up, the purchasing power of the investor will go down. The principal concern for individuals investing in cash equivalents is that inflation will erode returns. This is the most important thing. This inflation risk is when real return on your investment is reduced due to inflation eroding the purchasing power of your funds by the time they mature. This we can say is inflation risk. Like for example, you can say if you were to invest in a fixed deposit today and you were to earn a 10% interest on it in 1 year's time, then if inflation has been 8% in that year, your real rate of return comes down to 2%. Real rate of return is 10% minus the inflation rate. That is the nominal rate of return minus the inflation return rate will give you the real rate of return. So keeping purchasing power in mind, you can say that comes down to 2%. Now, next type of risk that we're going to see is interest rate risk. Interest rate changes can affect the bond's value. If bonds are held to maturity, the investor will receive the face value plus interest. If sold before maturity, the bond may be worth less or more than the face value. Now, rising interest rates will make newly issued bonds more appealing to the investors because the newer bonds will have a higher rate of interest than older ones. To sell an older bond with a lower rate of return, you might have to sell it at a discount. So this is a very important thing. So you can say for in case of bond, the rate of interest and the price of a bond are inversely proportional. As the rate of interest goes up, the price of an older existing bond will go down. This is the reason why it happens. So a golden rule in debt investing, you can say that the interest rates goes up, prices of bonds go down, and vice versa. Now liquidity risk is our next point of view. What is liquidity risk? Liquidity means cash. This refers to the risk that investors won't find the market for their securities, potentially preventing them from buying or selling when they want. This is one kind of liquidity risk, that is asset liquidity risk is termed as. This can be the case with the more complicated investment products. There may also be the case with products that charge a penalty for early withdrawal or liquidation, such as certificate of deposit, etc. Another liquidity risk is that there is, you can say, a cash crunch for meeting up your short-term obligations. The company is not having sufficient amount of cash to pay back its current obligations. So this is another liquidity risk. We'll discuss in our next lecture in detail the different types. Next is credit risk, which is also known as default risk. Credit risk is just the risk that the person you have given credit to, or the company or the individual, it can be both, they are not able to pay you interest or pay back your principal on your honest debt application. That is credit. Country risk. When a country cannot keep to its debt obligation and its defaults. All of his stocks, mutual funds, bonds, and other financial instruments, they are affected, as other countries it has financial relations with. You can say. So if a country has a severe financial fiscal deficit, it is considered more likely to be risky than a country with a low fiscal deficit, right? Now, emerging economies are considered to be more risky than developed states in this case. Our next type is political risk. This is also higher in emerging economies. It is a risk that a country's government will certainly change its policies. For example, today we can say that a policy is there and like suddenly the company changes its policy. So all these things, or instability of the government also, this can also cause political risk. Reinvestment risk is our next. What is reinvestment? Investment risk is whenever we are investing somewhere, whatever we are expected the return from it, we are not getting that expected return. That is investment risk. Whereas reinvestment risk is something different from, slightly different from it. This is the risk that you lock into a high yielding fixed deposit or corporate deposit at the highest available rate. Currently, you can say that suppose 9.5% you have deposited, and when your interest payments come in, there is no equivalent high interest rate investment avenue which is available for you to reinvest this interest proceeds. For example, if your interest is paid out of the 1 year and the prevailing interest rate is 8% at that time. So you can understand you already now invested now at 9.5%. Now when it is maturing after 1 year, the same fixed deposit is giving you 8%. So this is reinvestment risk. Next is foreign exchange risk. Forex market, we know this is a forex is a foreign exchange. This simply applies to any financial instruments that are denoted in a currency other than our own home currency. For example, if a UK firm has invested in India and the Indian investment does well in rupee term, the UK firm might still lose money because the rupee has depreciated against the pound. So when the firm decides to pull out its investment on maturity, it gets fewer pounds on redemption. This is termed as foreign exchange risk. Our next one is market risk. This is very important. What is market risk? This is the risk that the value of your investment will fall due to the market risk factors, which include equity risk, right? Risk of stock market prices, volatility or changing fluctuation of the stock market. Interest rate risk is also there and currency risk is also there. Commodity risk is also there. All these are sources of market risk. So this is simply the risk that is faced by an investor due to the volatility or fluctuating stock market. Next is horizon risk. Horizon risk is suppose the risk that your investment horizon may be shortened because of an unforeseen event. For example, the loss of your job. This may force you to sell the investments that you were expecting to hold for the long term. So uh, if you lose a job, then the financial crisis will occur and you must sell at a time when the markets are down. In that case, you may lose money. So this is horizon risk. Next type of risk we can say is longevity risk. The risk of outliving. Longevity means the number of years you are living. Mortality rate. Now, the risk of outliving your savings is called longevity risk. This risk is particularly relevant for people who are retired or are nearing retirement. So, outliving your savings means You have saved your money for suppose taking that you will live for approximately 80 years or 90 years. Now, with God's grace, you are living for 100 years. So your savings are not sufficient for that. 10 more years are there, but you have already ordered your savings. So this is termed as longevity risk. Next is operational risk. Operational risk is this is the risk that occurs with the starting of any business. As soon as a business starts operating, this kind of risk arises. This may be due to internal factors, that is internal operational risk, or external factors as well. Internal factors means internal failures, strike in a factory, or you can say the corruption of the employees of an organization. This will also result in operational risk. Other than this, external factors such as changes in government policies and from external factors from the external environment, this will occur. Next is reputational risk. This is loss of a company's reputation or community standing, which might result from product failures, lawsuits, or negative publicity. So reputation takes time to build, but it can get lost in a day. So that is reputational risk. In this era of social networking, a negative Twitter posting by a customer can reduce earnings overnight. A negative blog post or a bad product review can occasionally spread like wildfire online, quickly thrusting a company into damage control mode. So that's all for today's session. I hope all of you have understood and enjoyed the session. Let's see in lecture 3. So thank you. Stay safe for all. Thanks a lot.